Hope is born of participation in positive solutions. That's where you get hope. If you're somebody who gives $10 a month to an organization that helps starving children in Africa, you will have more hope about ending child hunger than someone who's not giving that $10.
Yeah.
You have to generate the energy that produces the hope. Otherwise, we're sitting here saying there's no hope. Well, all the universe is ever saying is, if you say so.
Woohoo! Welcome to another amazing episode of Open Relationships, Transforming Together. I'm your host, Andrea Miller. I'm joined by my amazing colleagues, Joanna Schroeder and Brian Adkins. Thank you guys for joining us. We have an amazing guest today, someone who I've been a huge fan of for many, many years, the one and only Marianne Williamson, presidential candidate, best-selling author, amazing thought leader, genuine icon in so many ways. We are so thrilled to have her on Open Relationships. But first, because our show is new, I want to give you a little bit of context. And I'm going to say this. Gosh, it's almost never been harder, it feels like, to be in relationship than it is today. There's a mental health crisis that's surging, a loneliness epidemic that's surging. I do say that there's a relationship crisis in our society, and it is tearing apart our social fabric. I want to say it's hard to talk to anybody anymore. It seems like it's hard to listen to anybody anymore. We're all so reactive and distracted, right? Weapons of mass distraction. And so we've started this show because we know relational wellness is as important as emotional wellness and physical wellness. We know it's easy to deprioritize our relationships. We know it's easy when we're hurt or frustrated by somebody to tune them out. But we do that at our peril. Building strong relationships make us all stronger. Building a beautiful, extraordinary marriage, I know for a lot of us it seems like impossible. I'm here to tell you, it's not impossible. It's something that I personally care deeply about, and not just your marriage, your relationship with your kids, your coworkers, your parents, your siblings, your friends, even strangers. How we show up in the world and how we relate to others in the world is the key to how we thrive in our lives. Relationships are not a spectator sport. It is time for us to make contact. So let's get started.
Hey, Andrea, if you don't mind, I have a quick question about our guest today, Marianne Williamson.
Mm-hmm.
So while I was looking her up, I know she's a huge believer in A Course in Miracles, but I personally don't know anything about what that is. Is it like religious text? What is that?
Let me tell you about A Course in Miracles. Thanks for asking, Brian. So, so A Course in Miracles is a 1976 book written by somebody named Helen Schumann. The underlying premise is the greatest miracle is the act of simply gaining a full awareness of love's presence in a person's life. And so A Course in Miracles had its own following, and it was its own thing. And then Marianne came in and she wrote a best-selling book that sold many millions called A Return to Love. So A Return to Love, reflections on the principles of A Course in Miracles. So that's the connection between A Return to Love and A Course in Miracles. But Joanna, you've been a big student of A Course in Miracles. What else would you add to that?
Yeah, what I loved about A Course in Miracles, I mean, there's courses, there's workbooks, there was a series on Oprah's radio channel years ago that I followed closely. And it's kind of like a way of finding ways to create miracles in your own life instead of waiting for them. And opening up to see the miracles that are coming in. And that is that's like a major oversimplification, but in looking at how you lead with love, how you lead with your heart, and what the energy you put out there is, you are able to create and receive miracles. That was not a good explanation.
No, I mean, I get it though. So it's the name is literal,
Yeah.
like in A Course
Yeah,
in Miracles.
it's
like
literal.
Okay.
And they're
Wow.
Yeah,
literal
it's very
miracles.
it is very practical.
Yeah.
And it's a set of steps for sure. But to me, it's the ultimate empowerment, right? And people hear miracle and they think it's a little flaky sounding, but it is genuine. It is the genuine ultimate empowerment because it keeps putting the, if you will, the power in how how you're interpreting what's happening in your life, and rather than reacting, you're responding, and what it all means. Like you're able to confer meaning and do something with it versus being a victim,
Yeah,
right?
and
Okay.
it's
Cool.
very like you create your version of the world, and that often is used to be very victim blaming, but in this
Yeah.
way it's more of a finding a sense of control in an out of control world. And like you said, it sounds a little woo woo, but when you actually start talking about the practicalities of it, these are things that anybody would kind of agree with. Like if
Yeah.
I go around focusing on the negative aspects of my life, I'm going to create more negativity.
Mhm.
Whereas
Yeah.
if I can
Right.
recognize the negative aspects of my life while also thinking to myself, how do I put more of what I want out in the world and then
I-
create more of it?
Totally. I have a girlfriend who, and I do love her, but she's pretty negative. And it's interesting to me. She'll complain about how she's getting this, sort of like negative feedback from people, whether it's at the, somebody she's buying coffee from or whatever. And it's like this kind of negative and nastiness is coming back at her. And I just, it's like I've had to say in a little try to be careful way, you're putting out some tough energy, sweetie, right? And I mean, not that I'm perfect, but I have found, I mean, the older I get, the more intentional I am, the more I study Course in Miracles and these kinds of things. Oh my gosh, it's like I'm getting free coffee,
Yeah,
So
yes.
it's your point. Like it is the energy you put out. It is the how you interpret things. If I interpret the fact that I got a flat tire or something happened as I'm a victim, or, oh my gosh, I got a flat tire and now my new best friend is the guy I bought a tire from. I mean, whatever it is,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And it's like what you do with it.
Well, and I think think about when this came out in the 70s, or even when I started looking at it in the very, very early 2000s, it was like mystical, guru, cuckoo,
Yeah.
whatever. And now science has already progressed since then that now we understand mirror neurons in the brain, where it's not just that you're sending me vibes. It's also that there's a part of my brain that's reflecting something coming from your brain. Like
Totally.
there's just so much we don't know that could be totally based on physics. And when you're open to it, it's a game changer.
Yeah, it really is.
I'm very curious to see how this translates into a presidential candidate. I mean, I don't know much about her, but like I know you are a huge fangirl, Andrea.
Yeah, we're super fans.
I would love to. Actually, hold on. She's in the waiting room right now.
All
Should
right, we got her.
let her into the show?
Exciting.
All right.
All right. You want to tee it up and
Yeah, let's welcome the one and only Marianne Williamson.
Yay.
Thank you. All right, amazing. Thank you, Brian. I am overjoyed to welcome our very, very special guest, the one and only Marianne Williamson. As many of you know, Marianne Williamson is a best-selling author, political activist, change maker, thought leader, and presidential candidate. She is the author of 15 books, 4 of which have been #1 New York Times bestsellers. Her most recent book, The Politics of Love, which calls for a political revolution driven by love and acceptance. We're big fans. Williamson founded Project Angel Food, a nonprofit organization that has delivered more than 14 million meals to ill and dying homebound patients since 1989. The group was created to help people suffering from the ravages of HIV/AIDS. Marianne has also worked throughout her career on poverty, anti-hunger, and racial reconciliation issues. In 2004, she co-founded the Peace Alliance and supports the creation of a U.S. Department of Peace. Marianne Williamson knows firsthand how our current system is failing most Americans. She's had a 40-year career facilitating personal and systems transformation and has inspired millions, many millions, to grow and transform in their lives in spite of our broken system. Marianne, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you.
And I feel like there is so much more I could say about you and your impact on my life, on the business that I've built. And so I'm just very grateful to have the chance to speak with you today.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. Thank you. So my first question is, you are polling at 11%. That's an impressive number, especially given that you haven't held political office. It's over 10 times how you polled in your previous presidential run. What do you attribute this to?
Well, first of all, that's one poll, so you don't know. If the next poll, it's going to be that. But I think that has more than anything probably to do with the fact that the kids get me. TikTok. But then who knows? Because you don't know with some of those polls, who are they talking to? There's a lot of talk about which talk to landlines. A lot of the Gen Z doesn't have landlines. So I like to think it's that enough people heard me and realized that the message of this campaign is meaningful and could play a significant part in their lives. But you just don't know. You just don't know.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's super impressive. I mean, it's still very early days. And
Thank
so
you.
I've seen that 11%, and you're right, it's one poll, and it could very well be higher. But I have found it very, very
Well,
heartening. Yeah, I have found it heartening that you're getting through. In fact, one of the things that I've been impressed by, of the many things, in a recent interview, you said someone needs to tell the truth. You say that the society is rigged and not a real democracy. You say that we need economic justice. I would love to hear you talk a little bit more about that fundamental premise. I love how you talk about if you were on stage with Donald Trump and he'd be telling the big lies and you'd be telling the big truths. My supposition is that your courage in telling the truth is one of the reasons that you have seen so much success early on in your campaign. But I would love to get your take on this whole business of telling the truth.
All of my work, political or otherwise, is filtered through the worldview that I have received as a student of metaphysical, spiritual, and religious truths. And one of those is that you have to own it, whatever it is. There's a line in the Course in Miracles that says, you can't bring the light to the darkness. You have to bring the darkness to the light. They
Amen.
say in AA, you're as sick as your secrets. The notion of atonement in Catholicism, you go and you tell what happened to the priest. On Yom Kippur, the holiest day of the year. In Judaism, the Day of Atonement, you acknowledge what you've done. In AA, you have to admit the exact nature of your wrongs. You have to face your character defects. And the fact that I have worked with these principles so much, not only in my own life, but in the lives of others over the last 40 years, is part of what I feel that I can bring and needs to be brought to the United States. The United States needs to face its dirty secrets. The United States needs to look in the mirror. The United States is like the vast majority of people, because all we are is a group of people, after all. We have some things to be very proud of, and we have some things that we should be ashamed of. Both are true. And the person who loves you, whether it's a close friend or a therapist or counselor, when you're looking at the tough stuff, doesn't let you forget that you've done some good things too. And when you're looking at the good stuff, doesn't let you forget that doesn't mean you have some things you have to look at here. And that is
Right.
what I believe we need in a president today.
I really am glad that you brought up TikTok and the young people, because I remember when I first read A Return to Love was a long time ago, and following the Course on Miracles, it felt like people around me were not ready to hear this love-based sort of embracing and creating your destiny and accepting reality and all of those kinds of aspects of the message. And now it seems like with this sort of democratization of information, young people are willing to hear things that are not typically fed to them through mainstream media. And they're interested in things that are really new, that feel like they could actually change the world. So I'm glad you said that about TikTok, because I can feel how young people are so open to doing things differently.
I think several things are involved there. First of all, they were raised by mothers like us.
Yeah.
they were raised by women who read the kinds of books that we read and write, right? That's number one. I don't think that we should in any way underestimate how important that is. Secondly, they're not 20th century people. Even those who were born in the 20th century were like there for as babies for a few years. They were born into a different paradigm trying to emerge. The mechanistic transactional politics and order of civilization of the 20th century is not natural to them. And most importantly, it does not serve them. They don't look at the economic ideas left over from the 20th century and say, well, look what that gives me. It gives me education. It gives me health care. they don't look at it and they say, what has that ever done for me? So I think that the sort of shadow side of what you just said is that some of that openness to the new is out of desperation and out of a kind of hopelessness. Because while this country, God knows, has never been perfect, I know I grew up at a time where at least you thought you had a shot of making it happen. And you have a whole generation now who doesn't foresee, something I did in the last campaign, and I have done it this time, and it's even more so. Everywhere I go, I say to the audience, is there anyone in this room? And I ask them, I'm going to ask you to raise your hands if the answer is yes to what I'm about to ask. And I'm also going to ask you, please, to keep your hands up because I want everybody in the room to look around. If you are a young person, or if you have ever heard a young person say that under normal circumstances, you would be thinking of having children, but given the state of the world today, I mean, look how you're nodding your heads right now.
Yeah.
Given the state of the world today, you don't think it would be the responsible thing to do. All over the country. I mean, I'm at a point where I would say at least a quarter of the room, sometimes a third of the room. And then everybody looks around surprised because they thought it was only them. A lot of the young people, they look at their future and by the way, they're not incorrect to fear that if we do not make a real fundamental turnaround from an energy grid based on fossil fuel extraction to green energy in a just and immediate way, that will be the majority of their experience. So there's a despair there too.
Yeah, no question. In fact, I was listening to an interview you did with the BBC, and to paraphrase, you talked about the deaths of despair, about how chronic stress and financial anxiety are upending people's lives. We believe in that. It's really the reason we're doing the show. We believe America's in a relationship crisis, right? And it's evidenced by the opioid epidemic and broader addiction, by the loneliness epidemic, the mental health crisis. It's bad. I mean, it feels really bad. And so what you're describing is, so on the one hand, there is you're kind of representing hope in a time of despair. It's tricky. I mean, I can see why, a lot of young women are like, I don't want to have kids because it is so scary out there.
I think it goes back to the first thing we said, which is you can't get to the good news without admitting the bad news.
Amen.
So I think a lot of people are just, can we please just say it? Because if we would just admit what's wrong, then we can be mature adults and get about the work of solving the problems. But if we continue to stay in kind of delusion and denial about the extent of the problems, then we will never get to the problem solving that's necessary. Now, what I came to recognize is with all the things that you mentioned, what you did not say, and what I think we all have to look at is the significant role that economic factors play, directly or indirectly, in causing so much anxiety. When you have 70% of Americans who reported, there was something from CNBC the other day, 70% of Americans said they live with constant financial stress. These college loans alone, I can't even imagine what it would have been like in my 20s, because debt it does something to you. It's crippling.
Yeah.
But to be in your 20s
Mhm.
and get tens of thousands of dollars worth of debt, I mean, that was unheard of when I was growing up. So not only that, but what are they in debt for? For trying to get an education, for trying to just broaden their horizons, spread their wings and soar. Public policy should be setting our kids up to win, should be supporting the actualization of people's dreams, not thwarting it. And you can't, if you're going to be honest, if you're going to be real, if you're going to be authentic, if you're going to be transparent and you're going to tell the big truths, you can't fail to recognize the role that economics plays in all of this, specifically a very unjust economic system.
Well, totally. I mean, and it's interesting to see you in interview after interview recently, as well as even going and watching the interview. You were brilliant on Bill Maher and how he gave you credit for being the only or one of the very few candidates that will actually get to the root cause, right? And even, I mean, Steve Hilton, I think, and Mehdi from MSNBC. I mean, Fox, the guys on Fox and NBC, and everybody in the middle are saying to you, Marianne, I agree with you, right? So it's striking to me that the kind of across the spectrum, they're all saying, I agree with you, and you've gotten to the root cause, and it does ultimately, it's coming down to the money. And
Well, they used to say about me in my career earlier, years ago, Marianne isn't saying anything everybody isn't saying, but she says it when the mic is on and when the lights are on. And I feel
Exactly.
doing the same thing in politics. Nothing that I've said here is anything you didn't know. We all know it at this point. I don't care if you're on the right, you're on the left. Corporations are sitting on top of all of us, with the insurance
Yeah.
companies, with the pharmaceutical companies, big agricultural companies, big chemical companies, big food
Mhm.
companies, gun manufacturers, big oil and defense contractors are running the show. At
Mhm.
this point, who doesn't know this? But what our problem lies in the fact that those industries, that corporate matrix of unbelievable financial wealth and power it represents profound institutional resistance to changing it.
Well, totally. And then that's where it feels like there's a genuine complicity on both sides, right? Which is what I appreciate we were talking about it before the show, your courage, your classiness, and your conviction to tell the truth when, as you say, it's hidden in plain sight, but you're one of the very few that is willing to say the emperor has no clothes and keep saying it.
One thing I've been thinking about as a person who likes the return to love and everything is, how do you do a big project like running for president where things can get so dirty and where it does feel like it's a Sisyphean task in a way? How do you make sure it's not being dominated by ego? Because I'm writing a book, so I think the same thing. I think, how do I do this and make sure what I'm doing is not ego dominated?
I got a 40-year career, and I've never seen anything like this.
Wow.
I don't know the answer to your question. I don't know. And I don't think I'm succeeding because I'm seeing things. It's a different animal.
Yeah. It's
It's a
not.
different.
But it feels like, I mean, I from the outside looking in, oh my God, you're getting close, right? I mean, you are making the establishment uncomfortable. Keep going, Marianne.
Well, so let's take that. Yes, I think I am, because I don't think they'd be coming at me so strong if I weren't. But
Exactly. You are a threat now because you are. It's back to the truth thing. It fucking takes courage to tell the truth. And you're telling it and you're getting a lot of attention for it. That
no,
is what is exciting to me.
to you.
I know, but like, I know.
That beast. It's like, and I appreciate what you said. Don't get me wrong. It was a sense that last time it was entertaining. It's such a joke. This time there is a serious effort to suppress any voices other than the establishment's chosen. But this is something that I think is meaningful. What has upset me at times has not just been ridiculous things that have been said or written, but how many people seem to buy it who theoretically should know better,
Yeah.
particularly women. Don't you get it, guys? It's on the internet. It's smut on the internet. Really?
Yeah. And that's a reminder to us that we can be attracted to, as humans, what thrills us, what lights up our brains, what's controversial, what's dirty. And it is a reminder to us, especially as women and as mothers. Andrea and I are mothers, and I know you have a child. And
And a grandmother now.
oh, yay.
Yeah,
how
we want to
exciting.
we want to hear all about the grandbaby.
Yeah. It is a reminder to us to, when we feel that little thrill, it is a bit of that shadow side that says like, "Ooh, I want something dirty," and to check that and to be like, well, what really happened? What is the full depth of this conversation? Like look for that light when we start to feel that little prickle of excitement, right?
Well, I've experienced so much of that when I read stories about people, I never assume, because I know how that works. But it is interesting to me who we give the benefit of the doubt to,
Yeah.
versus who we won't give the benefit of the doubt. And I wonder sometimes, what is it about me that people wouldn't give me the benefit of the doubt when I see another candidate? And I don't know. I'm trying to figure all this out, actually. But
Marianne, I mean, you are amazing. It's just amazing to me, when I think about how you are capturing people's attention and how the media is taking you seriously. And I can't imagine what you're going through, because it feels like it is the hardest job on earth, what you're doing, and speaking truth to power and truth to people that just don't, just want to pretend that it's not true. It's back to the emperor has no clothes. But I just think your courage is extraordinary. And in a lot of ways, I can't help but wonder, why aren't there more people like Marianne, right? Why aren't there more people that are putting themselves out there? Because you are, it's like the best and brightest of America. Here you are.
People who are within the political system, once again, I'm not saying anything they don't know.
Yeah.
And in many cases, I'm not saying anything they don't believe. But if they're already within the system, they know what the system would do to them. They know that they wouldn't get committee assignments, that there are forces that would give money to their opponents in their next primary. And they also know that the press will come after you in the ways that... So you would think that the people would go, let's support that person who's saying it.
Yeah. I wonder if there's a way in which it's frustrating to have so much of the conversation around candidates be about who's electable, because I know that that's a big part of who I have chosen to vote for. In the primary, I really do try to go with my heart and my intellect and try not to think about who could win. It's a valid argument, but it also is frustrating because it feels like it's hard to put our energy into creating what we want when we're also thinking about, well, who could be electable?
Well, also, Donald Trump was president. So can we bust through that myth?
I know, yes.
The last person we were told was electable was Donald Trump. We were told until the afternoon of the election he can't win.
Exactly.
So
right.
American politics is always unpredictable, but never so much as now. And also, there's this narrative that because someone won in 20, that they can win in 2024. I think it's going to be a very different election this year.
It feels like it.
So this idea that anybody is telling you have to vote for this person because they're the one who can win, I think who can win should be factored into our thinking, but not through the filter of an official narrative.
Okay. That's interesting.
Who do I really think? What do I really think is going on in this country?
Right.
And every candidate, including myself, is submitting to the American people. A political campaign is a long job interview. And you're saying, please hire me, and this is what I will do for your company, which in this case is this country. And I believe, as I'm sure Bobby Kennedy believes, and I'm sure Joe Biden believes, that mine is the agenda that would be the most compelling alternative and therefore the most electable. And not only that, but the agenda that would repair the country. But you should listen. That's why there should be debates, because you as a citizen, you as a voter, should hear what all of us say.
Yeah. That to me, I mean, for people that don't know and are not paying attention, the fact that Biden is not willing to debate other primary candidates is, it's like, I want to fall off my chair. It's reprehensible. It is the most anti-democratic thing. There is not a precedent for, I mean, maybe in modern times, but there is, I think there is a massive, talk about injustice. There's a massive injustice to have that, very few people with that kind of control. I mean, I think all Democrats should be howling.
Look how the media, I always call it a political media industrial complex. I was reading today, CNN is going to have a town hall with Chris Christie. CNN had a town, we know he had a town hall with former President Trump, but he also they had a town hall with Nikki Haley. Well, my poll numbers are higher than theirs. So why?
Yeah.
Media plays along, and the media just chops wood and carries water for the.
You're gonna. Oh, I love chop wood and carry water. Amen. Little Lao Tzu, but love the reference. You'll break through, Marianne. I mean, it would be just inconceivable, and I feel like it would be bad bad for them not to.
Well,
say, listen, they could say the Democratic Party. I think they could have a heyday with it and say, but we at CNN, we're actually going to uphold these important democratic principles.
I nominate Andrea Miller to run CNN.
Chris Licht is out, so I think they could use a new Andrea.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
There's a quote that I love, and it's funny because it's specifically referring to YouTube, but it sort of transcends all things, in my opinion. But the quote is, in the world of YouTube, usually the only thing holding you back from getting more views is your own integrity. And it's funny because it does seem like a rational person speaking rational thoughts. It's like, well, that's not exciting. Like, you gotta, everyone else is, I don't know, getting more press because they're doing crazier things. But it's like, is that really what we want from a leader?
That's why we need the adults in the room, right, Marianne? I mean, that's it.
That's the adults. And that's also an indictment of the media, because too often,
100%.
There's powerful independent media, and there are people within the mainstream trying their best. So this is not a blanket criticism, but the way mainstream media normally operates, because it is profit-driven, the news should not be profit-driven. It should be truth-driven, integrity-driven, educational-driven. But if, in fact, everything that Brian was just saying, acting in integrity might not get as many clicks. It's if you write a piece about how awful someone is, it's more likely to get clicks than if you write a piece how they did the decent thing. So
it's the classic all press is good press.
But it's also why we have these candidates, that they have only their own self-interest at heart, and it makes good entertainment, right? I would say particularly on the right.
Having run last time, my impression of candidates is pretty positive. It takes a lot to put yourself out there. I know what it takes. And I know when I ran last time how, not all of them, but most of the candidates acted. There's a political media system that all candidates are feeling at the effect of. I have a lot of respect for anyone who runs for office, for the most part. But I know what it takes to put yourself out there.
Yeah. So, we talked about this a little bit before the show in our prep time. And one of my personal favorite quotes happens to be one that you wrote. Your famous quote that begins, "Our greatest fear is not that we are inadequate." Right? It often, chokes me up a little bit. I have committed personally to shine my brightest, and I encourage my team. I'd love if you can just spend a few minutes talking about that, because right now, and I kind of interject this at this stage in the conversation, because you're stepping up and shining your brightest. And back to, you can't, what is it? You say you can't turn out the dark by more dark. You got to bring the light, right? And that's, again, I just think it's remarkable how much, I think Joanna or Brian used the word integrity. You're bringing profound integrity to your campaign. And it just, so when I'd love, I don't know if you can read it for us, if it's not right there, but just if you can tell us, how you kind of were motivated to write this, Our Deepest Fears quote, and recognizing how it's impacted and given inspiration to so many people.
Well, it's interesting. All it is a paragraph in a particular section. It's not a separate piece in the book at all. It's from the personal power section, I think, of my book, A Return to Love. And the subtitle of that book is Reflections on the Principles of A Course in Miracles. So that I can't take credit for the basic, what excites people about it. It's a concept from the Course that we would be more afraid of our light than our darkness, because our darkness is our sense of separation, the ego mind. The ego mind is afraid of your embracing the totality of who you are, because that is the death of the ego. So the ego says, don't go there, because then it's obliterated. So what is it? It's our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be talented, gorgeous, what do I say, fabulous or something?
Brilliant, fabulous.
Fabulous. In fact, who are you not to be? You were meant to shine as children do. You're playing
Well,
small.
you're a child of God.
You're a child of God. You are meant to shine as children do. Your playing small does not serve the world. Is that what it goes next?
There's nothing enlightened about this is the one that I just get goosebumps. There's nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. And I love to tattoo that to like something, when you're getting the, the BS feedback, right? Because that you're living that quote that has motivated so many millions of people. And then I love how you say, we're all meant to shine as children do. We were born to make manifest the glory of God that is within us. It's not just in some of us, it's in everyone. Yeah. And then the last bit, do you want to read the last bit, or should I?
Is it something about how if as you were released from your own fear, you automatically release others? Is that?
Well, and as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give others
permission
to do the same. And as we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others. Amen, Marianne Williamson, because we are social creatures, right? 70% of our communication is nonverbal, right? We're energetic beings. I don't care if people think that's woo-woo. It is true, right? And so, if I showed up on this podcast, tired and depressed and grumpy, that's going to change the conversation. I'm showing up with my A game and so grateful and with such a full heart for you. And that, and I think for me, as a mom, as a sister, as a friend, as a daughter, how I bring, that's why I say, I'm here to shine my brightest, because that is how I personally change the world. And I know, where I learned that from you.
Yeah.
Right. That's how me as one person changes the world. I have to change myself. Can we give I don't know if Brian give our big applause.
I want to,
because that is at the heart of, that's at the heart of what you teach. And I love how you even talk about how Jesus is a teacher, right? And whether you're, political or religious, I think we can all agree Jesus was a profoundly important and wise teacher, right? Yeah. And so I appreciate, and that's, I feel like what has made you this icon is that you have been a profoundly wise, important teacher. Let me ask you this. So you're an inspiration for so many other people. Where do you get your inspiration? Do you have a go-to author or friend or rabbi or priest, or is there somebody that you're like, oh, I just need to be reminded?
The Course in Miracles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. You go back to the OG source.
That workbook every morning.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Every morning you go back and get into the Course of Miracles. That's part of your daily.
Yes. Yes.
I have friends who've done the workbook 8-10 times through. My sister-in-law did it, I think, 6 times over her infertility journey. And she says, oh, I don't think I would have our baby if it weren't for Marianne's workbook. It really is so affirming.
You know, it's like physical exercise. You never get to stop. It's not like, oh, I've done it enough now. But particularly going through the kinds of things I'm going through now, believe me, it's helpful.
Keep doing it. Keep doing it every day. Keep that practice. In fact, I've got a question. I'm an author also, as is Joanna. Do you ever go back and read your own books? Just curious. No? Okay.
No.
I'm like, I kind of cringe reading my own.
Yeah, I find it very, I mean, we would never publish anything that I write.
Totally. Yeah.
No. I write a Substack.
Okay.
Yeah. Marianne Williamson,
follow it.
Substack.com. And and that's I read that. I'm really enjoying. There's something about how that looks on a page.
I have a Substack too, and there's something about feeling like you're talking to the people who want to hear you, right? Because they've subscribed. It is so empowering.
So
I have a question, kind of tying back to what we were saying about being afraid of your light. I know for myself, I have a very, very small degree of notoriety that compared to what you have, but I know for myself when I started journeying into a more public career, I had to deal with the fact that being powerful meant also having the things that are taken out of context or misunderstood or even mistakes being made very loud. And I had to find a way to let go of my message once it was out of my mouth. And that was a huge challenge because it is accepting your power, the power of your platform. Have you noticed something similar in your campaign?
Times a million. Try running for president.
Oh my goodness.
It really is one of those things, though, what you have control over and what you don't have control over. You know, when you are tried in a court of law, you have rules of due process. You have your own lawyer, and your lawyer gets to cross-examine the person who is attacking you. And, you know, you get to present your own evidence. When you are tried in the media or in the court of public opinion, on Twitter, people can say what you have no control.
Yeah.
And if you start trying to respond and defending yourself, then you can sound like you're whining.
Game over. Yeah.
And so that's kind of where I am right now, this sense of I have no control. And the people who are going to believe that are going to believe that.
Yeah.
And the people who are not going to believe that are not going to believe that. And it goes back to what you were saying. Why is it that some people want my voice nullified? And then you realize, well, of course they do.
Yeah.
Well, but I think I'm heartened by how much visibility you've been getting in the press, and I have every confidence will continue. It feels like you're breaking through, and part of me just feels like it's the art of oh my gosh, just getting out there and saying it again and again. I mean, it's like, if anything, I think of you as the ultimate populist candidate. And I know there's been a lot of comparisons to Bernie. Let me ask you, you don't have to tell us the truth. Are you in touch with Bernie at all? I mean, I'm just curious.
I am not at the moment. I met with him. I asked if I could meet with him 2 months ago, like probably towards the beginning of the year. And so he knew I was running, and he made some nice comment about it. But then when President Biden announced his run, Bernie came out and endorsed him immediately and said that he hoped no one else would run. So everybody was like, well,
yeah,
we weren't necessarily hoping for an endorsement, but I was sort of hoping he'd just stay silent. But, you know, everybody does what they feel in their heart they need to do.
Well, no question. It actually, I mean, just back to this whole business of how your message and economic justice and making the system genuinely more fair for the vast majority of us, right? I'm curious, have you got a sense, are there any people that lean right I mean, you have a very, if anything, I would say you are the candidate that has been the most vocal about having God and love at the center of your life, right? And not necessarily espousing a particular religion. But I would think that there are a lot of Christians who would find that really attractive. I mean, the Course of Miracles is large. I mean, yes, it's a religious. At the same time, there is a lot in there that I think a lot of Christians would go, oh yeah, that feels really good and wise and familiar. And then you've got a populist platform that's actually really good for the people that need and deserve things like healthcare and education and child support, right? So that's what when I talk about you're being this incredible populist candidate that really is for the people. Are you finding, and then at the same time, you're considered left of Bernie, right? So those two kind of feel at odds to me. I'm wondering if and then you get Steve Hilton from Fox talking about how much he agrees with you. Have you found that your message is appealing to anybody on the right, or are they just too nervous to actually agree with you?
Well, first of all, I think people are waking up to the illusion, the illusions that are created by this right-left dichotomy. The real dichotomy in this country is not between right and left. That's created by people who don't want you to look up. It's like that movie, Don't Look Up. Everybody says, no, they're the problem. They're the problem. They're the problem. The people where, 1% of our population that holds such extraordinary wealth and power and puts the short-term profit maximization of huge corporate entities before the safety, health, and well-being of the American people, having moved us from a government of the people, by the people, and for the people to a government of the corporations, by the corporations, and for the corporations. The people of the United States are waking up to that. I don't care if you're a Republican or a Democrat or agnostic or a libertarian. I don't care where you are on the political spectrum. What I think of myself as radically American.
Radically American. Can we just say radically American? Marianne Williamson.
Yeah, amen.
Really good.
I'm just talking about the principles of the Declaration of Independence.
Yeah.
That all men are created equal. That God gave all men unalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, which means self-actualization. And that the government, the Declaration says, the government is instituted to secure those rights. And that if the government's not doing it, it's the right of the people to alter it or abolish it. I just want to realign public policy with the Declaration of Independence and its humanitarian values. If you read the Declaration, it is a profound spiritual as well as political document. I mean, look how it starts. We hold these truths to be self-evident. All men are created equal. That's not a political statement. That's a spiritual statement.
That is amazing.
God gave all men inalienable rights. That's a spiritual statement.
Well, totally. And what we all know, even if we're not scholars of history, is that our forefathers were religious men, right? They were
Masons. Some of them were not religious as you and I would,
right?
But
they
were
spiritual.
Justin wrote his own Bible, right? They were. Ben Franklin was a Rosicrucian. If you look at the Great Seal of the United States on your dollar bill, take it out. You'll see, what is it? It's the Great Pyramid at Giza. The Great Pyramid of Giza with the capstone returned and the Eye of Horus on it. Now, in real life, the capstone has been removed and nobody knows where it is. But the metaphysical tradition holds that when humanity becomes enlightened, the capstone will be returned. And that third eye, which we know there was it in blue, it was painted on the top of the gold capstone. That's how for hundreds of miles away, people would know where it was. It's quite a mystery because nobody knows why haven't archaeologists found it yet. It's buried somewhere underneath the sands of Egypt. So the spiritual traditions say humanity will remember its divine function. That will be the return of the capstone. That's the picture on our Great Seal. And with the capstone returned, and underneath it, it is written, Novus Ordo Seclorum, new order of the ages. So it's pretty funny when all these people are criticized for being new agers.
Oh, I love it.
It's funny how many times I've seen that pyramid on our currency and never once thought about it.
Yeah. Professor Williamson, thank you for the history lesson.
Well, I love that stuff.
It's super interesting, and I feel like there was some Masonic tradition with some of our forefathers. I've always thought there's some kind of
Absolutely.
Mason, some of them, and there's mysticism in the Mason. My grandfather was a Mason. There was
Yes.
something mystical. Now I'm curious. Now I'm like, ooh, I gotta dig in here.
Andrea's going to go down a rabbit hole.
I'm going down. Scoop me up if I go too far, people. But hey, I want to get back at there are a couple things we talked about. You have a grandchild. Is this your first one?
Yes, my daughter had a little girl about 10 days ago.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
Oh
Yeah,
my
she-
gosh.
So actually, yeah, a couple weeks old.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. Mazel tov. Congratulations.
Thank
Cheers.
you.
Is
Beautiful
it the
little.
greatest thing? I mean, you've done some really cool things. Is it the greatest thing ever to be a grandma?
It's
Up there, top 10?
it's very profound. It's very gentle. She's very she's a very beautiful person. I mean, she's adorable. She's a baby, obviously very cute and all that.
Uh-huh.
But she's got a presence to her.
Oh.
Mm.
She's got a presence to her. She's very calm,
Mm-hmm. Oh.
very sweet.
Mm-hmm.
She's got a presence to her.
Andrea and I were discussing a quote, something that you put on your Facebook page about parenthood when it's sometimes there was a time in which it was seen that becoming a mother was like giving up your power. And I can't remember your exact quote, but your quote
I've
was,
got it. I've got it.
oh, good.
Let me
Andrea's got it.
let
Because
me
we were both
chime
so
in.
moved by it as working moms.
So moved by it. And as I get older, yeah, I mean, I'm 52. My kids are still pretty little. We started late, and yes, a very passionate working mom. So you said beautifully, for those who choose to have children, parenthood is the most important job. You go on to say, nothing we do is more important for the world than how we raise our children. I mean, let's just stop and say amen. You go on to say, it is a flawed strain of feminism that argues otherwise. The idea that going out into the world to do something societally significant is any more or less important than what we do in the home as mothers, and I'm sure you mean as father, as parents, has done tremendous damage to many women personally as well as to the society at large. And I think it is the most important job as a mom, or as a dad. And so I appreciate your the eloquence there and lifting it up, because I feel like how much do we suck as a society that, oh, you're just a stay-at-home mom? Like, I just want to say like a big F off.
And
Like,
economically, it's
totally.
we're putting people back by not supporting the conscious work of parents.
And that's why in other advanced democracies, they have free childcare, they have paid family leave. Also, that goes back to what you were saying, that conservatives can appreciate.
Yes.
Yeah, when I was younger, my mother used to say that the most important work of a woman was to take care of her children and to take care of her home. And I remember when I was young and I thought my mother was just so retro to say that. And I wanted to go, I was that generation of feminists. We want to go out in the world and do something important. There's something more important. And then you grow up and you realize, no, there isn't anything more important, number one. But number two, there is no out there. And I think that my mother was right. I just think we've expanded to realize that taking the care of the children is our most important work, but that means everybody's child, not just
Yes.
ours. And taking
Oh my God. Can
care
we say that again? Everybody, it's important to take care of everybody's children,
Yeah.
right? Yes.
the love that will save the world is not just the love for our children. It's a love
Right.
for every child. And also when my mother said the job of taking care of our home, the earth is all of our home.
Mm-hmm.
We have to take care of our home. I don't care whether you have a $10 million house or whether you're homeless, you're breathing that air if you're on the East Coast of the United States today that's coming from those wildfires.
Yeah.
And I love that
I love
perspective
that.
because we at YourTango, we talk a lot about like making the world that is going to be better for our children. And I always have to remind myself with my work, not just my children. And so you saying that this is the world's children. And if it's not for all children, it's not for children. If it's just for mine or Andrea's, what good are we really doing?
Well, and there's this big myth around, it's like this whole business, like around selfishness, like me. We had a guest on recently talking about the, me to we, and just being in that very different mindset, right? It feels like so much of what is causing America to fail is this tyrannical, toxic hyper-individualism. If it's me, 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 I mean, good luck. Like, it's a myth.
I think the higher consciousness community has contributed to that over the last few years.
Hang on, I want to understand that. You think that the higher consciousness community has contributed to what?
The me.
Interesting. Okay, that's what I thought I heard, but that feels a little counterintuitive.
Well, I can only take care of myself, and I can do anything and what I can do.
I see.
I can have anything, you can do anything, you can be anything. And it's got to be we can do anything, we can be anything as well. Because,
Mm-hmm.
and don't get me wrong, applying this to ourselves is very important.
Yeah.
But in some cases, it's been almost used as justification for turning away from the larger collective. And at this point, the biggest dangers to our future don't lie in the personal realm alone.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Really enlightened, but if the whole thing's crumbling and American civilization is in decline, it will ruin your day.
And it reminds me of that the kind of new agey higher consciousness idea of like no one can make you a victim without your consent, which often is used to make it seem like there's no systematic oppressions.
Exactly. It's a very privileged and entitled perspective.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I'm so glad you're saying that.
Yeah, no, I do too. I mean, it's back to the, as we have been talking about throughout the session, just this, these uncomfortable truths. And this is where we want, to tell the uncomfortable truths here on Open Relationships, right? About ourselves, our society, right? Because that's how we make change. You said it at the beginning, Marianne, right? Like if we can't talk about what the systemic problems are and where we erred, we can't fix them. Like then it's like mass delusion. But I want to come back. One of the things we always ask our guests is an unpopular opinion. And whether, we like to talk mostly about, relationships, but given that it's you and you're a presidential candidate, we're open for any unpopular opinion that you want to share.
At this point, I think every opinion I have is unpopular with someone. I can't think of any one more than any other. Because...
Well, and again, I mean, amen for you to be courageous as you are, and that you're hanging in there, because it's like it's dangerous and scary to tell truths and to say the emperor has no clothes, right? I mean, so seriously, props and thank you to you for doing that again and again. The other one that we often ask about is an uninvited Buddha, somebody that has really been instrumental in your life, somebody that you may have resisted. So I'm wondering about who your uninvited Buddha is, and I'm hoping you don't say Donald Trump.
No. What I'll say is that pretty much every situation I've ever been in. Because I think every situation both invites you to be bigger and better than you were before, and tempts you and challenges to fall into your ego default positions. As far as the situation goes, I'd say the greatest uninvited Buddha is those who lie about you in the media.
Oh.
Amen. Let's just say it again. The uninvited Buddha are the people that lie about you in the media. And what I've been so impressed by how gracious you've been and just strong in those conversations. And I realize it's got to be tough, but I just, not to be too much of a fangirl, but to see your graciousness and your conviction in those discussions has been, beyond inspiring.
Well,
and
thank
I'm
you
sorry to know you're going through it.
I will remember that. I'll remember, Marianne. And I try to remember that. There are people out there who are expecting you to handle this well. I've seen this in my life. People, for two things. People notice how you fail.
Mm-hmm.
They notice how you fail. They notice how you succeed. And I think, and this is not a bad thing, I think this is just a human thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think people watch how you respond, because life, we can't always control what happens to us, but we can control who we choose to be in the space of what happens to us.
Amen. And that, and you you are a living masterclass of that.
I don't
The
know.
other one I wanted to come back to.
I'm not perfect, but I can
Well,
say
you're
I'm
not
trying.
perfect. No, you're not. But just, I mean, first of all, you've got a mind of a steel trap. It is amazing to me, the facts, the figures, the quotes. I mean, it is. I mean, it is really fun and interesting. I always learn a lot when
Thank
I
you.
listen to you. But again, just that not to bring it back to sort of the emotional and heart centered, but it is that emotional and heart centered way that you communicate. To me, that is as important as kind of the message itself for me. But I also want to come back to, so it's tough sledding for Marianne Williamson, right? I mean, you are putting yourself out there. There are uninvited Buddhas every day in the media. So much nonsense. You said you do A Course in Miracles every day, which I love. Do you have a set of girlfriends? Is your mom still alive? Like, are there other people in your life that are the people that, or, are you, do you get sort of strength from your daughter? Like, I'd love who does Marianne Williamson lean on?
The people who are closest to me personally don't really understand what a political campaign is like.
Oh, I believe
The
it.
people who are closest to me politically, I don't want to be emotionally vulnerable. And,
Oh, God.
I don't want them to think, oh, I don't know if she can handle this. You know what I mean? They're all
Yeah.
nice people,
Yeah.
but I don't call them till I'm already have picked myself up.
Yeah. I got
You know
you.
what I
That
mean?
sounds lonely.
So it is. It's a very lonely experience, actually.
I know, I get it. I mean, just to hear that, I'm like, I was hoping you're gonna be like, oh yeah, like I've got these 2 or 3 girlfriends or men or cousins that it's like they've got me. But I totally hear you when you say nobody really understands it, right? And then you have to be ultra protective for the people that might get it. Then you've got to be ultra protective. Like that's tough sledding.
And I want them to, yeah, but she's handling it. It's not that they're not lovely, lovely people, because
Well,
they are.
totally.
But, I don't want them to think, like anyone else, I might
Uh-huh.
be down, but that
Uh-huh.
doesn't mean I won't have picked myself up 6 hours later.
Mm-hmm.
So you
And
want to be
also,
careful who you talk to while you're down, because they think you're still there and you're over it. But
yeah.
That's kind of that challenge of pioneering something. When you're that first one to say something, to step out and do something in a different way, it's such an example of how, oh gosh, there hasn't been somebody who has developed a spiritual or internal practice like I have, who's also done this thing that is very unique. And then that I can imagine how lonely that would be. But that's, you can imagine it for any pioneer doing something new.
yeah, it's one day perhaps I will write about all this.
I think that'll be
Oh,
amazing.
I hope you do. Yeah, I was literally like, the thought was just like, gosh,
Mhm.
if you weren't doing this, and I am going to give a shout out for people, if you, anything that you've heard today or anything that you've read or seen about Marianne that you think is smart, that you think should, deserves more attention, I want everybody to give, whether it's 5, 10, $50, go to
Thank you.
MarianneWilliamson.com. It's not a
No,
vote,
no.
people.
Personal stuff. So that, no, it's Marianne2024.com.
Oh, Marianne2024.com. Thank you for that. And I just want to emphasize, folks, it's not a vote, right? And whether it's $5, 10, 50. And I say that because these are really important ideas, right? And Marianne deserves to be in the town halls on Twitter, on CNN. She deserves to debate President Biden, right? And so to the extent, let's face it, campaigns take a lot of cash. They take, whether we like it or not. We've been talking a lot about money on the show today because,
no idea.
yeah. And so it's just important, again, even if it's a small amount, if you're somebody that believes in love and peace and courage and truth and the the Constitution and the things that we've been talking about, I do urge you to support Marianne in what she's doing, because it is so critically important for our democracy. What else haven't we covered today, Marianne, that whether it's, again, politically or, gosh, what you're doing next? Oh, Brian, did I get the high sign?
Yeah. I got a fun one. We talked earlier about how it's surprised, like the youth, especially on TikTok and stuff like that, have really responded well to your message. And as I'm sure anyone who's ever created something on TikTok, sometimes the most unexpected things resonate really deeply with a large audience. And so I was just kind of curious if you've seen clips of yourself or of your message kind of going viral or resonating with people that are sort of unexpected. Like are there any that you were like, oh wow, kids today really like relate to this message? That's awesome.
It was getting money out of politics.
Ah,
Oh
can we give a big clap for that?
yeah, of
I mean,
course.
so and I'd love to
Can you also
drill in a
elaborate
little.
on that?
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. What exactly do you mean by that?
Well, people understand, or many people do, that the undue influence of money is on our government is this. It's the cancer underlying all the other cancers.
Mm-hmm.
Because our legislators, in too many cases, do more to serve the goal of short-term profit maximization for their donors
Right.
than they do to serve their own constituents, the safety, health, and well-being of the American people. So people get that. Now, there was a Supreme Court decision called Citizens United a few years ago, which opened the floodgates to just unlimited financial influence on the part of
It made organizations. I mean, it effectively said organizations are being treated as people.
Well, they
right?
had already said that, yes, but then they took it to the point of just extreme open the floodgates.
Right.
And the average person can't compete with that. It's and people know that now. Now, given the makeup of the Supreme Court today, it's not reasonable to think we're going to overturn that decision anytime soon. But we need to be focused on it. We need to be very, very focused on it. And
so are you
gerrymandering, there are other ways in which the will of the people is thwarted. And the will of the people is supposed to be the governing force in this country. One of the things that I've come to believe very strongly, having run and running now, is that the American people are not the problem. I mean, we're no better or worse than anybody else, but I think we're decent people.
Yeah.
On the left, on the right, Eisenhower said the American mind at its best is both liberal and conservative.
Right.
But the will of the people, it goes back even to like what you were talking about, the debates. Let the people speak here. I mean, that's the original radically American foundational principle.
Radically American.
That's what founders believe. They believe if you have a free press so that people can get the information, if you have free public education so people have critical thought formed,
right.
if you have the freedom of assembly so that people can talk among themselves about what's going on,
correct,
then more often than not, the people will make the right decision. But right now, there are forces that seek to suppress, not just voter suppression, it's candidate suppression with some of the things we're talking about here, which is a form of voter suppression. So there's this political elite, there's political class that has formed that's making the decisions. And that's why I call it political media, and this donor class, even billion. I mean, it's just, that's why people say we're not even functioning as a democracy. We're functioning as an oligarchy, that more power is exerted by those with just wealth and power than by this radical idea, which this country was founded on, which is nobody's smarter than anyone else. Just give everybody the information, and there's a wisdom in our hearts, no matter where we come from, no matter who our parents were. That was a radical concept in 1776. It's radical today.
Right.
That this country is going to bet on the fact that if you just leave it to the people, we'll come up more often than not. It wasn't like they were naive. It wasn't like they thought the people are always going to choose what in retrospect will be seen to be the smart choice.
Right.
That more often than not, that is the safest steering wheel.
Totally. And it is, I feel like it's radical in the best way possible. It's saying we believe in ourselves. Right?
That's
and what if how different the world would be if we just, I mean, Joanna, you talked about it, Marianne, you talked about it, this idea of caring for each other, but that fundamentally we believe in each other and ourselves. I mean, what feels like has eroded badly in our society is, yes, we have a lack of trust in our institutions. We have a lack of trust in one another. Right?
But
I mean, it feels
bringing it full circle. If you have, instead of humanitarian values as your governing principle, when those have been replaced by a soulless economic system,
Exactly.
which places no value on conscience, on ethics, on integrity, but only on that bottom line profit-making potential, then what you've got is a society that's put everyone in a dog-eat-dog survival type of mode. And when you're having to work so hard just to make it, you literally don't have the bandwidth to be there for your spouse, for your friends, for your children.
Totally.
That's where too many people are.
Well, what's fascinating to me is you're exactly right that when I'm talking to somebody who has a different political perspective than me, what I always try and do is find that middle ground, right? So somebody, what I'll try and do is find like, where do we agree? And usually the one place we agree is that there's too much money in our elections and that the corporations have too much influence. And
that's exactly
it's
right.
probably the one thing we all agree on both sides. And
those corporate don't want you to find that place.
Yeah.
Right.
They say, oh no, you can't listen to your friend, or, demonizing groups of people.
Yeah.
Well, and I think it is that profound concentration of wealth that's just gotten worse and worse. I think you've talked about what is a number 50 trillion. I mean, it's like an astronomical amount of wealth transfer from kind of the, lower middle class to the upper, and I don't know the stats you do.
1%. Three people own more wealth than the bottom half of Americans.
Yeah, and that wasn't the case.
Wait,
in,
3?
This is the largest income inequality. This is the largest income inequality in the last 100 years.
Yeah, by far, by huge amounts.
Yeah, the second we're in the second Gilded Age now.
Well,
that's why all these labor movements, all these strikes are so important, because part of the response to the first Gilded Age was the emergence of the labor movement. Now it's reemergence, and the demonization of the labor movement was a large part of how we got here.
Well, let me come back. But you were talking about how what's going to have to be transformed in the system. So the current Supreme Court isn't going to unwind Citizens United, right? I get that. But is there, the phrase I always think of is just straight up campaign finance reform. And that could be done if we had a legislative body, two legislative bodies that said, hey, this is a good idea, right? We really want to do the right thing over here for our future. Is that, so is campaign finance reform, is that the path to?
Absolutely, that's part of it. But part of the problem is that the same forces that we've been talking about all night tonight suppress people on the level of the congressional primaries and the senatorial primaries. The same forces that don't want a president who lays it down, they don't want House members that lay it down. They don't want senators that lay it down. So the only ultimate answer here is for the people to rise up. And for the people to get involved the way we never have before, and to get involved on the level of the primary as well as the general election. That's if Americans don't start making it as an activism, just part of a dimension of what we think of as a well-lived life. That's what has to happen.
Wow.
We have to start thinking that going to a city council meeting is the cool thing to do on a Thursday night.
Totally. It's like they say, all politics is local. Right. So getting back into your own sort of civic duty. Talk about city council. How about going to the PTA meetings? Right. Remember during COVID, people were like, oh, my God, you can't wear a mask in the school and let's bring our guns and, create a lot of havoc. Right. It's interesting how people come out in force in those instances when they feel like their rights are being taken away. But yet we're all sort of in this grand mass delusion. Like so many of our rights are being taken away because we're just willing to live with the status quo.
Well, how do we find a way to give people hope? Because it feels like without hope, who's showing up to those meetings? And without hope, who is going to believe in a candidate that might be a bit of an underdog?
I would think that a candidate running saying these things gives me hope.
Yeah.
Give me hope.
Thank you.
Yeah. That when I think about, why Why someone asked me to run for city council, and I said I would be bad at that. And also I'm writing a book, but also I don't want to because it feels hopeless. And that's where I saw where
Oh,
I
Joanna,
was.
you got to do it after your book. You got to do
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, now we're
We
going to
need
hold
people
you
like
to
you.
that,
Yeah.
Joanne.
I think I
You
don't
run
know
like
that I'm the right choice anyway, but regardless, it reminds me of the bigger conversation of like, it feels hopeless. And that is where I get stuck. And I admit to being part of perpetuating hopelessness. And I feel like as individuals, maybe just trying to have conversations where we name what makes us hopeful when we're talking about politics. Maybe that's a teeny tiny energetic shift that
Yeah,
any of
and
us
then
who are listening can do.
exactly. That's what would be my hope, is that people would say Marianne Williamson's agenda is hopeful. 2024.com. Give $5. Tell your friends. I mean, hope is born of participation in positive solutions. That's where you get hope. If you're somebody who gives $10 a month to an organization that helps starving children in Africa, you will have more hope about ending child hunger than someone who's not giving that $10.
Yeah.
Hope is born of participation and hopeful solution.
Yeah.
You have to generate the energy that produces the hope. Otherwise, we're sitting here saying there's no hope. Well, all the universe is ever saying is if you say so.
Yeah. Yep.
About anything
Okay, let's rewind. So hope is born of participation
in
And
hopeful solution.
action.
That's what you said. An action. I love that.
Generate
Yeah.
energy. You know, with
Yeah.
anyone with any kind of a, understanding of how all that operates, it's like no matter what you do, even if others don't see it, it impacts the ethers. It impacts who you are. It impacts subconsciously how other people read you.
Oh, totally. It's how it's like, oh gosh, this is like seriously one of my favorite topics. I mean, I have to sort of sometimes, like check myself. It's like, what is my motivation? Am I expecting a thank you? Or, right? But when you just do it for the pure, I have found when I do it for the pure, it's the right thing to do. It feels good to do that. I mean, talk about shining your brightest. Like that to me is how we self-actualize.
There's an old line, a traditional religious line: virtue is its own reward.
Yes. Oh, I love that.
How do you have self-respect? Well, do something that's respectable. Young women used to say to me in my lectures, how do I own my power? And I used to say, I'll tell you how you own your power. Use it on behalf of someone else.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm writing these down. Virtue is
Wow.
its own reward. And when it comes to being empowered, what did you say? Use your
Use
power.
your power on behalf of someone else. That's what activates it.
That is the ultimate power.
But the way for it to be activated is to use it. But if it's just for yourself, it's not your real power.
Yeah.
Your real
Yeah,
power
no.
it takes you beyond self.
Yeah. In my house, we have a chalkboard where I write little messages for my kids. And what we have right now says, what you feed will grow. And
Well,
I feel like that's the message I want to walk away with from talking to you today is
thank you.
if I want a change in how we do politics, even the little tiny ways in which I'm talking about politics and finding hope and talking about the positivity and taking little bits of action that are tiny bites that are digestible and manageable, that will help grow that hope and that positivity.
Yeah. I love that. I mean, it's like the ultimate power, right? I mean, to me, it really is the ultimate power.
It is the ultimate power.
And that's what I've learned from you, Marianne.
Thank you. And I got it back from you guys as well.
Amen. That is wonderful. Is there anything else that you want to make sure we talk about today? And by the way, we'd love to have you back on the show as the campaign progresses, as your numbers go up.
Thank you.
But anything else today that we should talk about?
No, this was great. I so appreciate it. Thank you for your encouragement. Thank you for your positivity, all of you, and for reminding me of, because you do get, you hear all kinds of things when you're running for office that are not so lovely. And thank you for this. It was a gift. Thank you.
I'm sure that's an understatement. And we are such profound believers in you, right? You have taught me. And by the way, I think I've given your book, not kidding, I've bought your book for at least 30, 40 people.
Thank you.
And so I personally am super grateful for the chance to get to speak with you and to encourage, I'm going to say it again, to really encourage the people that have watched or listened to this video, go to, I want to make sure I get it right this time, Marianne2024.com,
You
whether
got
it's
it.
$5, $50, if you're like, listen, I'm short on cash, then what I want you to do, tweet out one of the cool things that you believe that Marianne is trying to communicate, right? There are back to the whole point of how we can all be so much more politically active and give ourselves hope and be part of the change that we want to see. So I would say if you have $5, $50, if you want to donate to a amazing teacher and person who is really populist and really trying to make positive change in the world, please go to her site and make that donation. If you don't have the cash, then tweet the thing that you love that she's saying. It's not a vote, but let's really try to get those folks at CNN, the head of the DNC, to understand as they look at social media, to understand there is a groundswell that Marianne is creating, right? It's inevitable, right? It's happening. And so be part of that groundswell for all the right reasons that we've been discussing today. That's what I ask of my audience.
I'm excited about the Substack too. I love
Thank you.
that.
Hey, yours as well.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
I'll send it on. Thanks.
Please.
Oh yeah, we'll put the links in the show notes. Okay, this has been an
Thank you.
amazing, amazing show. Marianne Williamson, you are the best. We
Thank
are so
you.
grateful for the chance to spend so much time with you and to hear all that you've had to say. Again, there's so much wisdom in all your writing and all your work. You're doing the important work as a political candidate, as a presidential candidate, to make our country a better place. And we're just profoundly grateful. So thanks for being on our show. Come back. We hope in the next few months you'll come back and be on Open Relationships again so we can keep talking and keep learning from you. All right. Mwah, thanks.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much. God bless.
Oh my gosh, guys. How amazing was that?
Wow.
That was incredible.
Wow.
Yeah, I feel like I walked away with really understanding things about her and about what she's been doing that I didn't understand. And I had been kind of a victim of hearing what was said on social media and not necessarily investigating things deeply enough, even though I've always been a fan of A Return to Love. And man, that was mind blowing.
Yeah. Well, there were so many great things. What I really felt happy about was I felt like when we started the show, she's a little guarded, right? And understandably, and I appreciated how honest she was about how tough it is to be running for president. And I would contend, as a female running for president, it is not a level playing field, right? And so I appreciated her sharing that. And I felt like as we got further and further into the show, that there was a little bit of that kind of her letting her guard down, which I was grateful for, right? Because she's a superstar, but she's human.
Yeah, and in what she does, it's hard not to be paranoid, but it's hard to trust anybody because the amount of people that don't want you as competition or what you do might affect their bottom line, or whatever, it's got to be so tough and almost disheartening to kind of live, every time not being able to trust anybody, and yet she still spreads this message of positivity.
Totally. And I would say battling the self-interest. So many of the interviews that I've watched, it's like the journalist is thinking about him or herself, and it's like, ooh, gotcha. What's a tough question I can, and how can that clip go viral? And then the journalist is able to say, oh, that was my clip, and I'm the one that was able to get her. And that I just feel like that intention and that energy is, it's fair. We want our journalists to ask our politicians and business leaders and everybody the tough questions. I get that. But it does feel like there is especially in a lot of the interviews that I've seen with her, it just feels like it's a little bit of a tougher, higher bar for her. And just people not taking her seriously, which is crazy. She's polling very strongly. She's what's amazing to me is how serious a candidate she is. She is in it, and I don't want to say in it to win it necessarily, right? But I would say as somebody that just adores her, if she continues, as I believe she will, she can change the discourse, I believe, even if she doesn't make it all the way, right? And and to me, that's a huge win, right? That she does break through.
We think about that idea of like what you feed will grow. And I've been really examining, like, in my own heart, why is she running for president?
Yeah.
What is this about? And a lot of the reason that I appreciate why she's doing it is she is trying to create that shift. It's not even necessarily about becoming the president. It's about getting us to talk about, here's all the ways in which we are the same. Here's all the ways in which we are all being manipulated in the same way by the same people, even if they have different faces and different icons on that cable channel button. Yeah. It's the same type of manipulation. And I like that energetically she's out there saying, I need to be part of shifting this conversation. I need to be part of.
And with so much integrity.
Yeah.
Right? Because I feel like there's some people out there on the right and left, and it's like they just want to throw the bombs and they just want to make a name for themselves. And it's an utter lack of integrity. Like they're in it for themselves. I get such a strong feeling like she is going through this profoundly intense, lonely slog, right? Not because it's fun and not because she's going to sell more books. I mean, she sold millions of books, right? Like,
she doesn't need
really
it.
what I come back to again and again is the profound integrity that I believe, like she is saying there is a major problem and she's feeling she's answering the call. Marianne, you are answering the call and we're so grateful. Okay, Brian, what was your favorite little segment? Not to like beat a dead horse, but I'm just eager. I love to dissect these things.
Well, it's funny. I mean, it's hard to point one thing in particular because like I've only known about her through the grapevine, especially at our company, because so many people like subscribe to her philosophies and the quotes and stuff I've heard in pieces before. And, hearing like a dark horse kind of running in the presidential race, I was kind of like, oh, okay, this will be interesting. But like, damn, if she didn't win me over, like I fully like support what she's trying to do here. And I get, man, like how tough it has to be a rational person who wants to make difference, and not by being the crazy outlandish person, by being rational and open-hearted. And like, man, Andrew, you got me into a fangirl. I'm here for her. I hope she's got this.
Yeah, no, I love that. Joanna, what was your favorite morsel?
I love being radically American.
Oh, yes.
And the reason I liked it is that she had already talked about understanding that being American comes with a dark side and a light side.
Yeah.
That we do have a problematic history, and we still have systematic problems that are actively harming people. But that we can say being radically American can mean visualizing and adhering to the best parts of ourselves that want everybody to have the same opportunities and succeed. That's that radical Americanness. And like, it's going to stick with me. Like, I really, really love that, especially since she's not denying the bad. And like she said, you have to bring in the shadow side. And once we do that, we can embrace the whole thing and solve it.
Well, it's like, the Truth and Reconciliation in, I'm forgetting what country, the Congo, right? And we've heard about this again and again, right? Where those shadows and those dark truths, where they are acknowledged, right? The light is shown on them, how profoundly healing it is. And it's like, okay, we don't have to keep the secret anymore. Right. And now we can move on.
And like she said, the secrets keep you sick. And it's the same way with the country. If we can only see this country as something that is perfect and doing awesome and fly flags behind our pickup trucks, if that's the only way we'll do it, that's not really love. You can't really love something without seeing the hard parts, the hurt, and what needs to change. Like that seems like, well, how can you be patriotic without that?
I wanted to hit
totally.
that soundbite
Yeah.
so many times as she was talking, but I was like trying to keep it professional.
Good
But
job
like there
holding
were
it
so many times I was
together,
like, oh, I
Brian.
want to clap. I want to clap.
I know a couple times I'm like, Brian, we need the clapping. It's not just me.
I didn't want it to be, I mean, she's running for president.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to be like,
Yeah.
but like, oh, man, she is full of wisdom.
Yeah, she really is. She is very, very wise. So much integrity and so classy, right? Like it's just so amazing to hear her on these different shows and so forth, when people are being super tough, and how she just keeps it classy and doesn't get flustered. I want to see her debate, because I just love her debating style, right? Like how she's able to be real, right? And like I remember when she was running previously, it was like, well, girlfriend, and I know people kind of mock that, but it was like there is a realness to her that I think is profoundly refreshing. And I do hope, hey, DNC, CNN, Elon Musk, can you please give her the platform, the space that she rightfully deserves as a serious presidential candidate and as a female presidential candidate? Like it feels like it really must be said that it does feel like it is misogynistic and now, okay, fine, Nikki Haley got on CNN, like, okay, well, the vast majority of the candidates are male. And if they're not putting
Right.
any Democratic candidates on, that feels like sexist to me, actually.
But it
And
does
anti-democratic.
make you think, like she raised the point, like, what are we afraid of? What is
Totally.
it that we're afraid of? And I do wonder, that's all part of that corporate system is.
Yeah.
So that's
Upending
and that's
the
where
establishment.
that's where the grassroots things have to start happening for people who are true believers of hers is, and any candidate. You may have somebody else that is powerful and moving and energizing for you, even if it's not Marianne, who's outside of that system, and energizing and mobilizing behind them, puts the pressure on the corporations in order to catch up and give them more of a platform.
Yeah, it's
Definitely.
interesting. It's like carbon monoxide poisoning. I just think over the last 100+ years, little by little, slowly, maybe even, less than that. I'm not a great student of history, but it feels like our society has continued very slowly, but very sort of almost irrevocably, to go toward this hyper individualistic, tyrannical, capitalistic, as she said, like an oligarchy. And it's happened so slowly and so subtly over time. If it happened a lot faster, I think we'd all be like, wait, what? We would have all said, no, thank you. But it's happened so slowly and so subtly, right? And meanwhile, it's like I feel like we're just a nation of consumers where it's like, just give me more time on my phone and more snacks. I need more snacks from the snack basket, right? And so it's like we're under this sort of mass, sort of mass delusion together. Anyway, but I'm glad we get to have spoken with her, and it really has been heartening to hear so many from Fox to MSNBC, where the journalists are saying, "Oh yeah, I agree with you," right?
Yeah.
I mean, nobody's calling her kooky. I mean, and that's it's
She's
actually
hard
demeaning,
to disagree with.
and it actually infuriates me. And it's such a lame, easy, stupid trope, right? And I'm glad she seems pretty unaffected by it, mostly. But it's kind of like, shame on you. Like for like serious journalists or press secretaries or people that are in places of power that are meant to have integrity, to be dismissive like that, it feels really gross. So, I mean, hopefully there won't be any of that going forward, because she really has compelling things to say and her numbers show it.
Well, and a lot of our candidates that we have elected in the past have run 2 or even 3 times before being elected.
Totally.
They try and try and try again. And so I do feel like she, in my perception, has grown as a candidate too.
Oh, and you learn a ton, I'm sure.
Oh, imagine. That's a school of life.
And independent of whether she ends up getting elected, the fact is her voice is critically important in my mind, for our social, our societal, and political discourse. Good stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we got to wrap up. I'd love to keep talking with you guys all day. There's so much more to cover. All right. I will wrap us up. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in to Open Relationships. We've been transforming together on this show for real in a very, very big way. Please like us, follow us, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, or if you're watching on YouTube. We would love to hear from you. Please email us at openrelationships@yourtango.com. I'm doing free relationship coaching on the show. If you've got an issue with a sibling, with a spouse, a parent, a child, and they're just making you crazy, and you're willing to talk to me for 20 or 30 minutes, I'll give you my best shot. I'll give you my best advice. Let us know if you're down for that. On Open Relationships, we know that so many of these things that we go through are common, right? We feel like we're alone. And that's what we're really trying to change here on the show. So if you're up for it, let us know. But no matter what, like us, follow us, subscribe, keep tuning in. We've got Sue Johnson coming. We've got Helen Fisher coming. We've got some amazing guests coming up. And I think that's it. Brian, Joanne, did I miss anything? This is a YourTango production.
The only other thing is, speaking of, if you go to the YourTango channel, the very easy way to find this podcast is there's going to be a little tab at the top that says podcasts, and you can click it and find the Open Relationships podcast. So subscribe to that. Don't miss an episode, and we'll see you next time.
Bye, everybody.